Hi everyone, welcome to Google Analytics series of Hangouts. Today we are starting with our first session. I'm Albina Štimac, I'm a Google Partners Coordinator for Adriatics region, and this is the very reason why we have our session in English, so all countries can actually follow. Today we are talking about custom dimensions and metrics. I will not say anything more about that because we have an expert on our side regarding all Google Analytics topics, and this is Zorin, our Google Analytics certified trainer. So, Zorin.
Hi everyone, hi Albina, thank you for the introduction. My task for today is to, let's say, deliver this quite interesting topic to everyone listening in. So, this is the first of the Google Analytics Hangouts on air. Probably not the last. We'll see what you say and think about how this is going to be. Hopefully you will understand a lot and take something with you after this hangout. And that's basically it. So just for the introduction's sake, my name is Zorin. I come from the agency Escape from Osijek, and I'm one of the probably newest Google certified trainers on this topic, Google Analytics. So for today, we have a subject of custom dimensions and metrics. It's a pretty wide subject, so anything you have, let's say, like comments or questions, please use the Hangout window and apply all comments and whatever you want to get answers for after this formal part. Okay, so let's begin. We have this plan for today. So this is just a basic overview. It's what are dimensions and metrics, how do we plan what's going to be implemented and measured, how do you actually deal with custom dimensions and metrics, what is the life cycle, which is probably the most important part, and we have this last section, which is Q&A. So please be active. Ask whatever you need. I'll be on even after the hangout is over. So dimensions and metrics. Before we do anything custom, we need to, let's say, decipher what are dimensions and metrics. So the default ones, the standard ones, which you use on your daily tasks. So basically standard reporting and everything. So dimensions in Google Analytics are basically, let's say, groups of data or something that describes your users, your sessions, and your hits. So whatever you send into Google Analytics is basically widened with some kind of part of information. So for instance, country is a dimension, and the values for those dimensions can be Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, Germany, and so on and so on. In Google Analytics, you will see that dimensions and dimension values are given into rows. So basically, each row should represent one of the dimension values. This is only one of the examples. You have country, you have source medium, you have default traffic channels, or whatever you go through when you, let's say, analyze standard reporting. After that, let's say we have metrics, which in a way better describe what actually one dimension did for us. So metrics are quantitative measurements. Avinash nicely put it, metrics are numbers. Nothing too, let's say, complex in a way, but just pure numbers. All of these numbers can be represented in many different ways. Let's say like percentage of new sessions, like bounce rate, like absolute numbers, which is sessions or new users or something like that. In Google Analytics, you will see that metrics are represented as columns. As a, let's say, not so recent update, but most of the metrics are now divided into three separate parts, which are acquisition, behavior, and outcome or conversions. Everything you need to know, or let's say, if you want to see how many dimensions exist or which or metrics exist, please go to this link. It describes everything. So this is the documentation part of the Google Help Center, basically, which offers all of the information on how are these dimensions and metrics called, how can you fetch them via the API, and basically this is a lot. This is a good place to start when you start planning your reports or let's say measurement or anything related to analytics. So we go to planning. This stage basically answers the simple question, what should you measure, and if the standard metrics and standard dimensions are actually adequate to help you understand if you are successful or not. So when planning, you need to determine, are you going to allow Google Analytics to combine, let's say, these both analytics and non-analytics data? To be honest, let's say, when you do even a simplest implementation, non-analytics data, let's say business data, is extremely valuable to have inside Google Analytics. And it gives context. So let's say we are moving away from standard dimensions and metrics and giving more meaning to what we actually collect in Google Analytics. This is both applicable to dimensions and metrics. When planning, think of what do you really want to collect and how can you use this data. So this is basically a two-part answer. When planning, you can separate, let's say, your measurement plan in these 4 simple stages. These are 4 simple groups of, let's say, information with which you can describe, let's say, user, which can have a user ID, you can collect lifetime value, gender, if the user owns a pet or not, if he has kids, how many kids, and so on and so on. So you really need to start thinking outside of the box. Because all of this information can really be useful on each and every stage of your marketing. Then you can describe your content. So basically, if you are a blogger, if you publish a lot of posts, then you would like to know some, let's say, you would like to have more information available about the content itself. So when it was published, who was the author of the content, how lengthy was the article, and let's say how many pictures did it have, and so on and so on. Then the process is itself. So you can describe the type of process, either it's a booking, purchase, search, or something like that. And you can even store some information which basically define or better describe the process itself. So let's say a search, like a site search, can only store, let's say, one simple search phrase. If you work in an industry which is basically retail, travel, or something similar like that, you will mostly like to store much more information than that. So in terms of travel, you can store the length of stay for, let's say, each traveler. Where did this traveler want to go? Where did they really go? And so on and so on. And then we come to the outcome or the conversion part, where it's extremely useful to measure not only revenue or cost or things like that, which are pretty basic, but you actually want to store profit. And this is one part where, let's say, custom metrics come in extremely, extremely handy. Now, you have all your wishes and all your plans laid out and everything is fine, but then you come to the stage where you actually need to see if this data can be provided to Google Analytics. So you need to define where will this data come from. Is it from your CRM, ERP, API? I don't know if you want to pull weather or some kind of data like that. How will you use this data, which is extremely important. In which kind of reports, how are you going to use them, either for remarketing segments or usage like that. PII. So this is a very, very tricky part of adding data to Google Analytics. Basically, you cannot store any kind of PII data inside Google Analytics. So be really, really careful not to pass on names, credit card numbers, I don't know, emails, addresses of your customers, and things like that, which can help identify the end user. This is a big no-no in Google Analytics. And of course, the availability part, which you need to define probably with your development agency or your, I don't know, any kind of service which you use for that. Can this data be presented on the client, let's say PC, at the time that it's needed for Google Analytics to pass it on to, let's say, to collect it with JavaScript code. So this is probably the most tricky part. If you want any kind of ideas of what to collect, how to collect, or let's say gives you an introduction of how you can think about your additional data inside Google Analytics, please visit this link and bookmark it, because this guy knows a lot of stuff, and it will really give you much more insight of what's, let's say, some of the first steps that you can do to get your data from your website into Google Analytics. So custom dimensions and metrics. This is a basic overview of what these are. And the definition by itself is really not so complex. So custom dimensions and metrics are really like the default dimensions and metrics, which you already have. But these need to be defined by you, or better say, by the code on your site. Google Analytics, let's say, waits for you to define them and send them with the code on your site. The values for each of the default, for the custom dimensions and metric will have to be provided dynamically by you, or better say, by your development team. So these are some of the prerequisites which you have to have before you even start planning, or before you even start doing anything with custom dimensions and metrics. And this is the first. The property type needs to be universal. Most of the properties now, or I believe 100% of them, are already universal. You just need to mind that all of these data that's sent to Google Analytics needs to use the universal type code. So no more GA.js, only analytics.js can send them from the web. Collection methods are the, let's say, how you can send all of these data to Google Analytics. So either you use SDKs for mobile platforms, either you use analytics.js to push data from your website to Google Analytics, or you can use measurement protocol API, which enables you to, let's say, send all of the hits to Google Analytics from whichever device is connected to the internet. And then last, but also very important, is that you need to predefine all of your dimensions and your metrics inside Google Analytics admin. When you are in admin, you can only define it on property level. So don't forget about it. You can send a lot of hits with a lot of valuable information, but if you didn't enable those things inside administration, you will basically not collect anything. Limitations are quite simple. For each Google Analytics property in standard version, you have 20 metrics and 20 dimensions. If you are a premium customer, hopefully you are, then you have a lot more dimensions and metrics available. So this is just to show the scale of how, let's say, big enterprise projects can really benefit from using this custom analytics information. This also means that you basically can, in a way, forget about all of the standard metrics and dimensions and build basically your own Google Analytics for your own business. And this is what the customization is all about. So if you cannot really decide on a decent level, or let's say have enough information about what your business is doing, or how your business is doing, then you can definitely use this a lot of these slots and describe your business better. Usage. So whenever you define a custom metric and custom dimension, you can use it, but not in all reports. So when you define and use custom dimensions, you can use them in custom and standard reports. In standard reporting, custom dimensions can only be used as secondary dimensions, so not as primary. But on the other hand, you can use primary dimensions as in custom reports. You can use them in segments, you can use that as view filters, and probably the most valuable part in using custom information in analytics is that you can push, or let's say define your audiences based on custom dimensions, and then push all this information into AdWords. This is what we mostly do, and this is basically one of the things that is a prerequisite for using Google Analytics remarketing for dynamic marketing for AdWords. So you will definitely need to define some custom dimensions to pull that off. Lifecycle. This is what you do when you decide to create a custom dimensions or a metric. So this is the procedure that you are probably going to do every once in a while when you get an idea and start pushing new data into analytics. So the life cycle is pretty basic. You have the configuration part, the collection part, the processing part, and the reporting part. The configuration part mostly is around defining what you are going to collect and how this data is going to be shown in reports. So, for instance, configuration is the process of enabling Google Analytics property to receive custom dimensions and metrics data. Without this step, you will basically collect nothing. So be mindful of that step. Always configure your custom dimensions and metrics inside Google Analytics administration and then move forward. How to do that? So the procedure is pretty much basic. It's as most of the things in Google Analytics, you just go to your administration, then you go to your property level and just click what you want to manage or, let's say, in addition, create. So under custom definitions, there are two things that you can add. These are custom dimensions and custom metrics. In this example, we will just add, let's say, one new custom dimension, and just follow the procedure. The procedure is extremely simple. You can see on the right side the small print screen, which actually is the interface for creating a new dimension. There are a few things that you need to take care of. First, the name. Please use some, let's say, simple names which everyone can understand, because these custom dimensions are probably not going to be used only by you, but other members of your organization. So make it something that everyone can understand. Ideally in English, because some, like this webinar, a lot of people speak different languages, so English is probably the best way to proceed. Then define the scope. Now, the scope is probably the most difficult part to understand in Google Analytics, because it specifies on how this data is going to be applied to all of the standard stuff that you already have in Google Analytics. The scope for dimensions can be product scope, user scope, session scope, and heat scope. So this is just for you to remember now. We will go through each of the scopes in the following slides. And one other thing, when you create a dimension, this dimension cannot be deleted. It can only be activated or reactivated or make it, let's say, passive, a non-active custom dimension. When you do anything and edit with the custom dimension, let's say like scope, like name and everything else, only the name basically is applicable to historic data. When you change the scope, everything that was recorded before is now something completely different. So when changing the definition of a custom dimension, be careful if it's going to be the same scope or something else. Similar procedure is for custom metric, but there is a few more fields which you need to take care of in order to create the custom metric. So first of all, name. Similar rule applies to custom dimensions and to custom metrics. Then you do scope. Scope is a bit different than with custom dimensions because you have only two scopes where you can, with which you can create a custom metric. So it's either hit or product. Product scope can only be used if you use e-commerce tracking. If not, you will only be able to use hit scope custom metrics. Then you choose the type. There is only three types of custom metrics, or let's say formatting type, that you can use. It's either integer, so you're basically just pushing numbers. Then you have currency, which is extremely useful if you want to, let's say, import profit or any kind of monetary values inside. And then you have time, which is also a really valuable piece of information if you want to track something like how long did the user need to fill out the form. So in this case, you can use custom metrics, but of type time. Then you can define minimum and maximum value. Now, in most cases, you will leave both these fields empty. But if this is something, let's say, sensitive in ways where you pass on profit or values like that, and if there is even a slight chance that your implementation can in some ways skew the data that you send from your website to Google Analytics, then you would ideally need to define what is the minimum and maximum value. So you basically define a range. So you cannot, let's say, push 1 million profit or even values more than that. You will have to limit that in order to keep your Google Analytics account safe. Why? Because as in most cases with Google Analytics, once you send something in Google Analytics, you don't have a way to change it. So there is no way to change the data after it's collected and processed. And also you can activate and deactivate the custom metric, and you unfortunately cannot delete it. You can just change it. So as well, be mindful of the scope and of the formatting type and everything else. Yeah, and this is something that is, let's say, extremely important. That's why it's a specific slide. Mind the scope always, because the scope determines where and how both the dimensions and metrics can be used. So it's similar to how you have, let's say, hit level dimensions, hit level metrics, session level dimensions, session level metrics. In some cases, these can be combined, but in some cases, these just cannot be combined because the results you will have in the reports are going to be really, really strange. So let's just go to the collection part, and we will get to the scope a bit later. So this is how you can collect both metrics and dimensions. As we said, analytics cannot by itself, let's say, think what you want to collect in Google Analytics. You need to explicitly say what I want inside. And for example, with analytics.js, this is a basic web tracking library. This is a very simple code. This code, the first line, creates the object. So whenever you want to send Google Analytics data to Google Analytics, you need to create an object, the GA object, and you need to define to which property is the data sent. So this is the UA number, and that's basically it. Each dimension and metric can only be sent to Google Analytics with an existing hit. A hit is the bottom line, which says, GA, please send me a page view. So this is the line which actually sends the data to Google Analytics. Now, the two mid lines, the first line creates, let's say, sets the dimension 1 and creates a value for that dimension, which is dummy. The second part is basically where we create a metric. And it's a completely similar procedure. The only difference is that we need to remember which index or which, let's say, slot we have each of the dimensions or metrics inside Google Analytics administration. So this is all available on property level. So when you create a dimension, you will always have a specific unique slot for each dimension and for each metric. So you have dimension 1, dimension 2, dimension 3, and so on till dimension 20. This also applies to metrics, where we have metric 1 till metric 20. So this is the way how metrics and dimensions are sent. This example is exceptionally valuable when you send metrics inside Google Analytics. Because if you get back to the previous example, if by any chance on the same page, after this page view you send an event, you will incrementally inflate this metric 1. So when you define this GA set metric 1 and the value of this metric will be 10, if you send an event on this same page, you will basically have a report which says that for, let's say, on a session level or on a user level, this metric will show 20. And you don't want to do that, basically. So this is the way how to prevent that from happening. So you do not use set, But inside your send command, command line, you basically define the metric and dimension. It can basically store both of these. So this is not mentioned in the basic documentation, but it's mentioned in the developers part of how to collect custom dimensions and metrics. So please use this way to provide information to Google Analytics. It's much more safer, and for more advanced implementation, it's something that's it's, let's say, like a standard. Then we go to the life cycle of the dimensions, which is the processing and reporting part. So this is the two, let's say, last stages of how to deal with dimensions and metrics. It's a bit different situations with dimensions and metrics because processing is a bit different because of the scope and the available scope for each of the dimension and for available scope of each of the metrics, and also for reporting. So for processing part, when you shoot the custom dimension and metric inside Google Analytics, all of these value needs to be processed. And when you do that, when you define this Google Analytics in the configuration part, when you define the scope of this custom dimension, this actually determines to which hits will a particular custom dimension will that be applied. So we have product, hit, session, and user scope. And now we will go through each one of those and we will see what are the repercussions when choosing each of these scopes. So hit scope, let's say this scope is used when you want to, let's say, describe only one single part of your site, let's say like a page. What it means is that if you have, let's say, a session, so it's a visit which contains multiple pages, you only want to have one of those pages widened with the custom dimension. So let's say, for example, you visit homepage, then you go to the category page, and then you go to a page which actually describes one destination, specifically in travel. And this destination, this page describes, let's say, Pula or Poreču or whatever destination this page describes. So if you have multiple, let's say you have a session where you have multiple hits, and let's say one person visits a page where a destination is Poreču, and the other page is a page that describes a destination which is, let's say, Pula. So each of these pages has a distinct value of the same custom dimension. So one is Pula, one is Poreču. So in this example, so we have a session. The first hit, let's say a page view, doesn't have any kind of custom dimensions applied to it. The second hit, so let's say a second dimension, has a custom dimension with an index 1 and with a value A. So only this hit is going to be enriched with this data. In this case, it's value A. It can be whatever value you decide, whatever value you actually need. If the same session has, let's say, one additional hit, only the second one is going to be enriched with the data. So the third one and the first one will not hold that information at all. Now, if the session has one additional hit, so this is the third image, the last on the right, the first hit doesn't have any information at all. The second one only has index 1 dimension, which holds the value A. The third one is empty, and basically we have an additional hit, which for the same custom dimension gives a completely separate or, let's say, unique value. So the end result of this is when you do reporting stuff is this. It's a basic, let's say, table which gives you a dimension on the left side, which says, okay, give me all of the page views for each of the destination. So let's say this dimension is used if you want to say, let's say, like use it for trending, for some of the specific part of your content, or for processes, or for, let's say, errors on site, or similar to that. Now we go to the session level processing, or let's say session level custom dimension. These are applied to the entire sessions. And what is really important to focus on here is basically that the last thing, the last hit that has any kind of custom dimension value applied to it gives the value for the entire session. So the session with only one hit where no custom dimension value is applied doesn't hold any custom dimension reporting value at all. So it's basically empty. The second session, let's say the same session but in a different hit, which is the hit 2 in this case, holds a custom dimension on slot 1 with a value A. In this case, if we chose the session level custom dimension, this custom dimension will be applied both to hit 1 and to hit 2. The third example is basically if we have a third hit which doesn't hold any kind of information about the custom dimension and the value, will basically take over something that happened on the hit 2, on the previous example. And the fourth example is if by some chance a user gets to hit 4, let's say does something on the site, let's say does some kind of an action which says, okay, this session is not an A session, this is a B session. So we only have to send this information on the last part of the session, and the entire session we hold that value. So all of these A values will be, let's say, deleted, will be overwritten by the B value. So for example, in reporting stuff, we can do something like this. So a custom dimensions can be max funnel stage. So that's basically the maximum that the end user did inside a session. So a user could have only visited the home page, a user could have actually seen the product page, or the user could go even to a booking page. So, but we are only measuring the last part, or let's say the lowest part of the funnel where the user has actually entered in. So if, let's say, in the last hit, the user went to the booking part, the entire session will hold the booking value of this maximum funnel stage custom dimension. And on the right side, you have a very basic definition of how you would add this kind of custom dimension inside Google Analytics administration. Then we go to the user part. So this is something that's really similar to session level. In what way? Once you define as user level custom dimension for all sessions, this value will be forwarded on. So let's say in the first session that the user has, there hasn't been any custom dimension of that type available. But in a second session, on the last hit, that is the mid image that you see on the slide, you can see that on the last hit, a custom dimension of index 1 with the value A was applied to a hit. So the entire session is going to be attributed to this value, to this custom dimension, and each subsequent session of that user will be tied to this value of this custom dimension. So for example, if you want to track if a user has, I don't know, subscribed to a newsletter or didn't, you actually need to define this information only once, because this is rarely going to change. You can, of course, let's say, override this custom dimension when a user unsubscribes, but this will only be applicable to all future sessions. So once you change the value of user scoped custom dimension, it will only be applicable to sessions, to the current session and all future sessions from that user. And then we have the product part, which is really interesting to people who have e-commerce implementations on their part. Product level is basically only applicable to products itself. It cannot be applied to anything else but products. So this is only applicable if you have e-commerce implementation on your site. So whenever you add a product, let's say this is a basic code to add a product, it's only the, let's say, some of the information which you actually send with e-commerce tracking. You just need to add it for each of the products in your e-commerce tracking. So in this case, we just send one dimension which is on index 4, and the value of that dimension for this product with ID P12345 is the value low. So in this case, we are actually giving a custom dimension to each of the products, which says that for margin group, let's say we have only 3 available values, which is low, mid, and high. To better describe it, we are basically describing a product if it has low margin, mid margin, or high margin. And this is extremely important for us if we, let's say, drive AdWords campaigns and we want to, let's say, push more budget to high margin products. And it's pretty much one of the most valuable parts of custom dimensions that you can actually stuff inside, if you use e-commerce tracking, of course. Now, the life cycle of metrics is a bit more different, but as I've said, you have only 2 scopes, and you really need to be careful of how you are sending metrics, because there is a very big chance that you can inflate all of the metrics that you sent into Google Analytics. So be really careful with which hits are you sending the values in Google Analytics. So the processing part for custom metrics is that with hit level, the custom metric gets associated with all of the hit level dimensions with which it was sent. So if you send custom metric with a page view, it will be associated with that. It's similar, it's basically the same as how a page dimension interacts with page view metrics. So whenever you send a page view, like a really simple page view on your website, the page view metric will always get incremented by +1. Similar applies to, let's say, something like sessions. When a user comes from, I don't know, Croatia, the number of sessions will be increased by 1, and so on and so on. It's similar to how entrances work and how to basically any dimensions and metrics tied together work in standard reporting. With product level custom metrics, these are as product level custom dimensions. These are only tied to products. So be mindful when and how are you going to access or query for these product level custom metrics. This is how these are applied to the hit. So this is basically the hit level. The definition by itself is really, really simple. So for instance, if you want to, let's say, measure the time needed for a person to fill out the form, on the left side, you see the basic definition of the custom metric inside administration. So it's only name, then you define the scope as hit, because in this case, it doesn't have anything to do with products or with e-commerce tracking. And in this case, we choose the formatting type, which is time. As said before, you can choose integer, you can use currency, and you can use time. So when you define a custom metric, you just need to take care of what kind of data are you providing with these kinds of custom metric. For time, it's essential that basically you are sending time in seconds. So this is something that you need to take care of if you need to convert something that you get from your system into what actually needs to be sent in Google Analytics as a metric. You can always combine metrics and dimensions. So it's not only that you can send a metric at a time or a dimension at a time or a combination of metrics and dimension. You can actually send 20 metrics and 20 dimensions with one single Google Analytics hit. In this case, you can send it with an event. So in this case, we chose to send a metric, which is 120 seconds. And we sent an additional dimension, which is basically a user ID. This is something that you get from your system back. So this is a dynamic value. You'll probably never use that in a way that you actually type in the value that you want to have as dimension or a metric. Most of these things are done programmatically and added dynamically. When you report these kinds of things, this is where all the beauty in Google Analytics gets out. So you can query for a user ID, which is a dimension, which we sent with hit. And let's say for each user ID, we can see how much time did each of these users need to fill out the form. So this is basically how we can use this data for further investigation. If, let's say, some of the users had to fill out the form, let's say, a bit longer than the other one, and we can debug all of the implementation and combine it with all of the standard dimension and hits available in Google Analytics. Most of these things will be done with custom reports. Now the product processing part and the collection part and the configuration, which is also described on this slide, is as follows. So on the left side, we add a custom metric, which will define our product profit. So as soon as something is tied up with e-commerce tracking, has to do something with the product, then we almost always choose the product scope. Because we'll probably query all of the things, let's say, we send in Google Analytics as custom metrics with the product. Let's say product ID, product brand, product name, whatever is tied to enhanced e-commerce. It can be enhanced or classic e-commerce. So we chose the scope product, but in this case, as we want to send profit inside, we use the formatting type, which is currency. So on the right side, you can see the basic snippet of how you are sending product level information inside Google Analytics with e-commerce tracking, where you also define the ID, the price, the quantity. There are also more available dimensions and metrics for e-commerce tracking. But in this case, we defined the dimension with the index 4, and we set the value as low. So this is the margin group for this particular product. And we set the metric 4, which is basically a product profit metric, and we set it as, let's say, 3. So for each sales of this product, which is valued at 10, let's say, units, each one specific item will get us 3 of something of profit, any kind of currency, which is basically defined in Google Analytics view. So when we get to the reporting part, this is the end thing that we want to do, so we can analyze all this data, is that we have a margin group, which is on the left side. This is the dimension that we used with the code. And we have 3 expected values for that. So we have low, mid, and high. But each of these custom dimensions can be also tied to a standard metric, which is in this case product revenue. Which is a metric which is also tied to a product. But in addition, we can query for product profit as a custom metric. So we can see, even though, let's say, one of these products gave us, I don't know, this and this specific product revenue, we can further analyze all of the sales and marketing efforts, but on profit level. So this is the major difference. You can then, this is probably going to be covered it in some future webinars. Now you have some other nice things available in Google Analytics, which are calculated metrics and stuff like that. So you can actually calculate the real profit of your sales, either by product, either by some custom dimension where you defined your product, and so on and so on. So as soon as you can start adding this additional information to Google Analytics, the better. So start immediately, because all of the information that you push into Google Analytics is only available in reporting from the time the data has been collected and processed. So all of your past hits and all of your measurement prior to implementation of custom metrics and dimension is basically empty. So when you come to the reporting part, and when you are ready to, let's say, do some analysis, it's pretty simple. You just create a custom report, or you just create an advanced segment and pick your favorite metric or dimension inside your newly created report or audience or whatever you actually want. So this is basically the end for today. I don't remember really if Albina mentioned that we have that we are open for questions on Hangouts, so you can pass your comments or whatever you need there. This is also a link to Google Partners Academy, where all of the future webinars, Hangouts, and live education is going to be held. So let's say, be careful when Albina either sends some kind of invites or anything else. But this is the link where you will have all of the things available about the upcoming education. The bottom links are basically the two major links if you want to tackle this subject, custom dimensions and metrics. The first link describes, let's say, the basic business and the Google Analytics administration part. And the second link is for the developers and everyone you want to send the link out to, who will actually do the implementation itself. So I will just go to the Hangouts page so I can see if there are any questions live or not. I don't see any, but if you have, we can do that on a later stage or something, and we can continue about that. So there are no live questions. If you want to, let's say, ask something or do something, you can send your email to Albina or, I don't know, either to me. I believe you have the, most of you have the access to Google Plus group, so you can ask your questions there. Thank you for your time, and hopefully, or let's say better, certainly we'll talk on the second Hangouts on Air, which is next Monday at the same time. We will cover content grouping, and see you there. Thank you.